Gary?
We are ready.
Okay, thank you so much to Tammy for getting our recording going, because I know I didn't do it. All right, I believe, Peter, we are ready to go.
Okay. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission monthly meeting. We are going to reverse the order of meetings and begin with the Planning Commission meeting first. So Sylvia, two things. Could I have a motion to for the minutes of July 26th?
So moved.
Is there a second? Sylvia, do you want to do both the roll call and the minutes, please?
I am going to attempt that. I'm still working on my cheat sheet, but let's go ahead and go, and everyone can yell out if I've missed someone. So from Auburn, we have Paula Martzloff. Okay, great. Thank you, Paula. Oh, we have Suzanne in the house. Yay. Okay, from Bedford in the house, we have Charlie Fairman.
Aye and yes.
Thank you, Charlie. Bill Jean.
Here and yes.
And online, Brian Lord.
Here and yes.
Thank you. Anyone else from Bedford I missed? All right, Candia in the house, we have Al Hall.
Here and abstain.
Thank you, Al. And virtually, we have Rudy Cartier. You are, and everybody online, you have to unmute yourself. Rudy, we did not hear you if you said something.
There we go. Yes, I am here. And yes,
Thank you. And up for the meeting minutes?
yes,
Yes, thank you. Perfect. Chester in the house, Andrew Haddock.
Here and abstain.
Abstain, okay. And Deb Munson. Here. Thank you. Let's see, no one from Deerfield. Am I right? I think no one, yep. From Derry, we have Richard Tripp in the house.
Here and yes.
Thank you. And online, we have John O'Connor.
Here and yes.
Thank you, John. Francistown. In the house, we have Gary Schneckenberg.
Here and yes.
Thank you, Gary.
we also have
And we have
Eisenberg
Alfred.
online.
Alfred online.
Thank you.
That's Alfred Eisenberg, just to be clear.
Correct.
Thank you, Alfred. No one from Goff. No, here we have David right in front of me. Dave Pierce.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, David. And from Hooksett, did I miss anyone? Didn't see anyone come in? No. All right, from Londonderry in the house, we have Suzanne Brunel. Here and abstain. Thank you so much. And online, we have Deb Levin.
Present and abstain.
Thanks, Deb. From Manchester, we have Peter Capano
Here and yes.
and Raymond Clement.
Here and yes.
Online, we have Marcus Ponce de Leon.
Here and yes.
See, we have, grab Brian on the way around. New Boston in-house, we have Mark Sunan.
Here and yes.
Yeah.
No one from where? And from Wyndham, we have Peter Griffin in the house,
Here and yes.
Edgar Lapointe,
Yeah, here and yes.
and online, John Hiltz. John, you're muted.
Sorry, I am here and I abstain.
Thanks, John. And let's go back to Brian.
Sylvia,
Yeah.
Sylvia, it's Art Roy from Londonderry. You missed me. I am here and yes on the minutes.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Art Rugg. He
I
is
didn't want to get left out.
Oh, my goodness, you're feeling left out. And Brian Battaglia. Brian, can you hear us?
No, he can't.
He can't hear us. Tammy, will you send Brian a chat? I don't think he can hear us.
I can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear us now. Okay, we need your vote on the minutes.
Yes.
Thank you. If we could start-
Sylvia, Dan O'Neill, Manchester, here and abstain.
Oh, excitement. Thank you, Dan. It's just sort of
This is an out of the woodwork day for all.
It
these
is,
people, really.
and we have oh no, that's one of my staff. We have a new staff member, Kevin Lawson. Kevin, can you show yourself? Everyone can see your face. I don't know if you can. Maybe not.
Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. We are welcoming his name on the field of virtual people. All right, I'm ready.
Okay, one quick announcement. Suzanne Brunel, who is one of our commissioners, was just appointed to the Manchester Corporation,
So I've been on the Manchester Development
but
Corporation.
you've become chair.
I have become chairperson, yes.
So congratulations.
Thank you. Do good things for the city of Manchester.
Okay, first item under new business, Invest New Hampshire. And would you like to introduce our guest, Sylvia?
Yes, so just to be clear for all our virtual folks, this month, we're putting the commission meeting first because our guest speaker, Sarah Wrightsman from New Hampshire Housing and Finance, she can only speak at this point, and we're very excited she's here. Oh, while she's there, let's quickly make her a co-host. Yes, so Sarah has two grant programs that are very important that communities will want to know about. And so Sarah, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Fantastic. Hi, everyone. You can all see my PowerPoint.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. I'm very cognizant of the fact that I only have few minutes. Thank you so much for your flexibility in moving this meeting around and having us here. It has been a very busy summer because, let me see if I can move my slide. It's not every summer that the governor gives you $5 million to play with and you have to build a grant program from scratch. So this is part of Governor Sununu's $100 million InvestNH initiative. But to be clear, I'm only going to be talking about the $5 million for the planning and zoning grants. That is the part that, my team at New Hampshire Housing was given to work with. Our objective is increasing housing supply by changing local land use regulations, which is truly always our goal. So we took that $5 million and we built two grant programs from scratch out of it. I'll get into a little bit of the details of both of them, but again, I don't want to get too in the weeds and take up too much time. Community engagement is an incredibly important focus for both of them. I'm going to circle back to that probably several times. We believe that community engagement is a key part of getting to local regulatory change. And so all of the grants have some community engagement resources built in and a community engagement required. There is no match required for municipalities, and that'll be important. I think that'll be helpful for a lot of our smaller communities. All of the information for the grant programs is up right now. We're in the process of building a website. It's nhopgrants.org right now. That'll redirect you to a page at New Hampshire Housing's website. And we have an email address too that goes to both us at New Hampshire Housing and the program administrator, which is Plan New Hampshire, info@nhopgrants.org. And we're hoping, I put this promise in here to put some pressure on us. The FAQs will be up and finalized by the end of this week. We've been working on those over the past couple of weeks. So I mentioned we broke this into two programs. This is the first program, the Community Housing Navigator Program. These are grants to municipalities to hire staff to increase their capacity. There will be coordinating regulatory change and conducting community engagement activities. So these community housing navigators will be working on anything in the community that has to do with housing. The fundamental purpose of them is to serve as a community organizer, and community engagement will be a central activity of this person. But as a staff person, they don't have to be a planner. They don't have to have like the technical expertise of a planner. A lot of folks have sort of gotten that confused. They can work with the planner and be in the planning department, but they're going to be a local staff person that's working for the municipality that's going to be organizing all activities related to housing. So this person could be someone who has experience in community engagement and community sort of advocacy, organizing kind of work. We have a sample job description up at that website, nhopgrants.org. It's one of the appendices of the application instructions. So eligible applicants all municipalities are eligible to apply for this program. We see this as being an important staff role for some of our larger communities. And so we built in this opportunity for smaller communities to also take advantage of this through joint applications. So say if you're coming from a smaller community that maybe doesn't need a full-time staff person to work on this housing work, you can team up with another smaller community and go in together and hire one community housing navigator who's going to be working for both of these communities. In the case of a joint application, the application coordinator is going to be either the RPC or the Workforce Housing Coalition. So a lot of you are in the Workforce Housing Coalition of the Greater Seacoast catchment area. They can coordinate, or of course, SNHPC can coordinate. They would also be the employer of the community housing navigator. So in my neck of the woods, I'm on the Seacoast. I'm coming at you from Newmarket. If like Lee and Madbury, small communities, wanted to get together and go in on an application together, like the coalition or an RPC could coordinate that application, and that housing navigator would work in both of those communities. They'd be a full-time employee, but they get to spend half of their time in each community. Smaller communities are advised to work on joint applications. To be more competitive, we can only give out 6 of these community housing navigator grants. That's what was approved through governor and council. We might have done things a little bit differently in the future, but we can only give out 6. We anticipate it being competitive. So smaller communities are advised to work together and put in a joint application. And navigators must work on, so any community that has a community housing navigator, including all of the communities in a joint application, they must be committed to a phase of regulatory change. I'll talk a little bit more about those later, but that's going to be like doing a needs analysis at the local level, doing some planning work, updating the housing part of the master plan, doing a regulatory audit, doing regulatory development, anything along those lines. Community housing navigators are committed to doing that work. And again, it doesn't have to be the navigator themselves that does it. They can coordinate it and hire a consultant to work with them. So these are grants of up to $250,000. That's again to support a full-time person for 2 years. Advance payments are going to be made quarterly. So this is a little bit maybe too in the weeds for what we need to know right now. But again, it's a maximum of 6 grants, individual and joint. So it could be more communities, but 6 total grants. The applications are due next month, September 30th. The awards will be made by mid-October. And again, we're on a little bit of like a time crunch. All the funds must be fully expended by September 30th, 2024. And that came from BEA and the governor's office that we've got to get this money spent. So I'm assuming if there are communities that are interested in this program, they're either working on those applications or they're about to get started on them. We did try to keep the application simple, to make it as easy as possible for folks to get in there and do this, especially for our smaller communities, but just in general, did not want the application itself to be a barrier. And then the other half of the money, so the other part of this grant program that we developed are housing opportunity planning grants, which we're calling HOP grants. So these are municipal grants. They can only go to municipalities. There's no joint applications for HOP grants. And these are to be used to hire consultants to work on 3 phases of regulatory change. And again, to conduct community engagement activities, because community engagement is a required part of all of these applications. So again, get money to hire a consultant. The consultant can be the RPC. They can choose from a list of pre-approved consultants that New Hampshire Housing is putting together. That list will be out by the end of this week. Or they can do a competitive process. And a lot of communities will be required to do a competitive process anyways, because it's part of their own procurement standards. And again, individual communities applying for these grants. So these grants can be used for doing needs analysis and planning work. So that's looking at, needs analysis. And this is meant to supplement the regional housing needs assessments that the RPCs are doing. So needs analysis type of work, sort of like local level assessment work, planning. So you can't update the master plan with this money, but you can look at sections related to housing of your master plan and update those sections specifically. Has to be housing related. Those ones, so these grants are going to be accepted on a rolling basis. We're going to be making awards on a rolling basis, but this part one is only open until January 27th. That's grants of up to $25,000. And then the next phase, regulatory audits, is grants of up to $50,000. This is an opportunity for municipalities to work with a consultant to ID the regulatory barriers in their zoning and in their land use regulations to housing development. And those ones are going to be open until June 30th. But again, rolling applications will be making awards on a rolling basis, typically within 30 days. And then the last part is regulatory development. And these are grants of up to $100,000 that go to municipalities to create or amend regulations to promote housing development, do inclusionary zoning, develop standards related to tax incentives, like the new tools that are in RSA 79E, like the housing opportunity zones. And these ones are open until November 15th of next year. And we pushed that back as far as we possibly could into the future to ensure that we're still expending and fully obligating the funds by our deadline. So these 3 phases are purposefully staggered the due date so that communities, they can apply for all 3 of them at once if they already know what they want to do. You can apply for a needs analysis and planning grant now and then come back later and do a regulatory audit and then come back later and do a regulatory development. So it's really up to the communities how they want to tailor this to what works for them. And we'd encourage you, if you're interested and want to reach out to the steering committee about what you're thinking about beforehand, before you submit your application. That's also totally fine. We're happy to talk with people. Our goal is always to get communities to yes and ensure that this work can get done in a way that works best. So again, community engagement is an important part of this work. You do not have to have a fully developed plan for the grant application, and I'll tell you why in a second. The budget must include, and it does include by default, $2,500 for community engagement activities. Again, rolling applications, rolling awards, it's a flexible application cycle. You can apply for 1 phase or all 3 or 1 at a time or however you want to do it. And payments will be made on a reimbursement basis. And now I mentioned you don't have to have a fully fleshed out community engagement plan. And that's because all of these grantees will be in Housing Academy, which is developed by UNH Cooperative Extension specifically for this grant program. So it's going to be training for municipalities. And every grantee will identify at least 1 person, but can bring a couple other people too to come with you. And volunteers who participate in Housing Academy can get stipends of up to $250. They're going to be interactive sessions in person and hybrid, and it'll help you develop your community engagement plan related to these grants. These programs are administered by Plan New Hampshire. If you're familiar with the MTAG program, Municipal Technical Assistance Grant Program, we have worked with Plan New Hampshire for several years to administer sort of similar grant programming. Plan New Hampshire is providing support to applicants in addition to New Hampshire Housing. And the steering committee, we put together a steering committee which has representatives from New Hampshire Housing, Plan New Hampshire Cooperative Extension, New Hampshire Office of Planning and Development, Community Development Finance Authority, and NHMA to support this project. Your grants do not have to go to Governor and Council. Luckily, the steering committee has the authority to make decisions on these applications as they come in. And that's my contact information. But again, at the beginning, I gave you the info at nhopgrants.org. That's great because it goes to both me and my colleague, George Regan, and our friends at Plan New Hampshire. So that is all. And I'm going to send these slides so that you will have access to them.
For questions for Sarah, would you please give your name and your municipality that you represent? Are there questions for Sarah?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Sarah, Dave Pierce, Gulfstown. The total scope of this initiative deals with affordable housing, right?
Yes.
So is there any reference at all to affordable housing?
No, specifically, no. None of the grant programs are requiring an affordability component. It's a really good question. the application does have to focus on either you're increasing housing supply, and that was BEA's big mantra. They wanted to see more housing supply in this InvestNH program. So you have to increase supply and or diversity of housing types and or affordability. So like you could use this funds to do something like an inclusionary zoning and have some affordability in there. But you're right, the grant program does not specifically require affordability.
Thank you. Next question,
I have a
House
question.
Peter.
Hi, Sarah. Peter Capano from Manchester. We're out a little bit ahead of the game. We've already got a consultant looking at our zoning and as far as housing goes. Is there any way that we can get some of the money we've already committed reimbursed through this program?
Anything, so services already rendered, no, but if you wanted to expand on the project and keep using the same consultant and do more, you absolutely can. We actually have an application already, and that applicant is already working with a consultant and already working on the project, but they ran out of money to do it. So they're expanding their project a little bit and continuing the project with some of these HOP funds.
Okay, thank you.
Next
It's
question.
good, you're ahead of the game though.
Any other questions? I have one. My name is Sarah. I'm Peter Griffin. I'm chairman of Southern New Hampshire Planning, and I'm from Windham. When considering an application, do you look at the town's income level overall, or is it just the value of the application?
It's going to be value of the application. I didn't include the scoring criteria or the rubrics specifically in the presentation, but that is available online in the application instructions. And the applications, by the way, for both of these programs are open. They went live on August 5th, and you can find the application instructions on that website. We're not looking at that specifically. We do hope that communities will give us a little bit of insight of just a little bit of tell us about your community and what the housing challenges are. That's the first sort of application question. We're thinking our initial thought, and it's hard to say what applications will come in. We're thinking that the HOP grants won't be particularly competitive. We have a lot of money to spend on the HOP grants specifically versus the community housing navigator. So we're hoping to be able to get to yes on most, if not all, applications that come in.
Thank you. Additional questions for Sarah online or?
We are running out of time.
We are?
Yeah, and you have that, could you tell us again or put in the chat box, the email address or any place that folks can find information out? That'd be great.
Definitely will. So it's nhopgrants.org. I just put that in the chat, and then the email address is info@nhopgrants.org. And again, I'll send actually, if I can attach my slides, I can do that.
You can
Maybe
do
I can.
that. Yeah, or just send them to Linda in our office.
I will do that. I will send the slides to Linda so that you have access to that.
That's great. And this is also recorded.
Sarah, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, and this is going to be very beneficial to the municipalities.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is presentation by Cam Prolman, Pathways to Play project.
Hello, everyone. So I think I have 5 minutes. Thank you, Tammy. So we'll see what I can get through. This is just information only. So can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. So I'm going to be giving a brief overview of our Pathways to Play project and just a brief update on where we are with it. So the Pathways to Play project was funded by the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation, as some of you know, and it was inspired by the success of Stratford RPC's Pathways to Play project. So the main priorities from the Children's Health Foundation are to prevent childhood obesity in children up to age 5, and to build support for state and local policies and practices to prevent childhood obesity. So those are kind of the parameters in which our project was built on. So the outcomes of this project are that communities in our region will have improve data and maps that they can use to promote recreation opportunities across the region, increase base knowledge and awareness in the region about local and regional recreational facilities and transportation infrastructure gaps. And lastly, municipalities and transit organizations will better understand barriers to accessing recreational opportunities. So the project has kind of 4 main components. One of them is the regional recreation asset GIS layer, as well as a GIS report, 14 maps for each of the SNHPC communities, 1 resident survey, and then a community pilot program. Because I only have 3 minutes left, I'm only going to talk about 2 of these, the GIS layer and the resident survey. And these are the 2 things that we've mainly been focusing on. So this is just a screenshot of a layer that Zach in our office and Tammy in our office have been working on. And all of these things that you see on here, let Fred McGarry in the room, are different recreational facilities, their parks, their playgrounds. I believe these are all public facilities, but there are also some properties that are owned and maintained by nonprofits as well. And Zach and Tammy, if you think I'm missing something, please feel free to speak up. So what this looks like, there will be, so there's attributes for each one of these dots on here. This is just an example in Goffstown of a baseball field. But ultimately what this layer is and will be is a resource for communities. It's a resource for us. This is a layer that we didn't have before. It's a layer that we're trying to make and keep updated. And the idea is in a future phase of this project, this layer will turn into a kind of interactive map that will have kind of a deep level of information for each one of these facilities that will tell you if there's parking, if there's a bench you can sit on and things like that. So anyway, we are kind of in the midst of updating this. I'm going to try to move on to the survey, and I only have 2 minutes, so I'm just going to give a really brief overview. So the purpose was to develop and conduct resident surveys to better understand if residents know about existing parks and rec programs and services in their community, to identify accessibility concerns in accessing those facilities, to identify transit knowledge and needs, and to better understand the recreation facilities and program needs of residents and of caretakers of children in the target age group. So this survey will be open through October. So far, we only have 214 responses. 89% of the responses are either parents or grandparents, and 5% are teachers. And right now, the majority of responses are from New Boston and Chester. So this is me asking everyone in this group to please reach out to me if you're interested, see how you can help distribute this survey with either Tammy or myself, and we'd be happy to work with you. I'm going to skip through a bunch of these because I'm totally out of time, but the next steps for us is to develop a survey report, and then we will be working with municipalities to review the GIS layer and develop maps for each community. And then lastly, we're going to be working with our stakeholder group to develop pilot project application, and we will be soliciting projects from communities where we will be selecting one community to work with. I feel like I just ran through a sales pitch, and I'm sorry about that, but again, if you have any questions, please contact myself or Tammy, and we'd be happy to walk you through this program. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it off to the MPO. And you guys are muted in the conference room, Sylvia.
Pam, you mentioned the date when the survey ends.
It'll be through October, the month of October. So.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we really need assistance. We've met with the Y many representatives from the different Ys in different communities, but we're still needing more assistance in getting the word out about this survey. So it's interesting. The little bit of response we've had, we're really hoping to get at least double that. So please let Cam know who he should contact, and Tammy as well.
For those communities that have their own newspapers, you might consider sending this survey to the newspaper so that they can post it for the public, so the public will know about it.
Great idea. Yes, I think we have done a little bit of that, but we can do it again.
Thank you, Cam. Okay, on to other business. Linda, do you want to talk about the annual meeting?
Yeah, just a reminder for everyone, the annual meeting will be in person, yay. Monday, September 12th, 6:30 PM at the Dairyfield Restaurant. We have 3 wonderful choices: Tuscan chicken, pan roasted salmon, or pasta primavera. The cost is $30. Please RSVP to me. You can make your check out to SNHPC, or if you want to bring cash or a check at the door, that's acceptable as well. Oh, and the dessert is going to be apple crisp. Everyone wants to know what dessert is going to be.
With ice cream?
I don't know. I'll try
For
to find
you,
out for you. In addition, as part of the annual meeting, we usually have awards to hand out. One is the Ray Clausen Award that honors a volunteer in our region, or the James Tethers Award, which honors a professional in our region. The deadlines for those nominations is this Friday. I've got hard copies out on the little couch out there, just underneath the big giant pretend check for Brownsfield. And so it's the applications are also on our website.
Any public comments? Any commissioner insights? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Move.
Is there a second?
No.
All those in favor? Thank you. Okay, I'd like to call the call to order the MPO meeting. We'll do what we did with the previous meeting. We'll do a roll call, but could I have a motion to accept the minutes of
Move,
July
so moved.
26th? Is there a second? Second. Okay, Sylvia, do you want to do the roll call?
Let's
and
do the roll
approval
call.
minutes?
So Auburn, Paula Martzloff. Here, yes. Bedford, we have Charlie Fairman in the house.
Here, yes.
Bill Jean,
Present, yes.
and online Brian Lord.
Here, yes.
Great. Candia, we have Al Hall here.
Here and abstain.
Thanks, Al. And online we have Rudy Carrier.
Yes, here and yes.
Thank you. From Chester, we have in the room Andrew Haddock
Here and abstain.
and Deb Munson.
Here, yes.
From Deerfield, I saw that Fred McGarry joined us online.
Here and yes.
Thanks, Fred. Good to see you. Derry, online, we have John O'Connor.
Here and yes.
And in the house, we have Richard Tripp.
Here and yes.
From Francistown, in-house, we have Gary Schneckenberg.
Here, yes.
And online, we have Alfred Eisenberg. Al, you have to unmute.
Here and yes.
Thanks, Al. From Goffstown, we have David Pierce.
Here, yes.
Thanks, Dave. Online, we have Jacob Fontaine.
Here and yes.
Thanks, Jacob. From Londonderry, we have in-house Suzanne Brunel.
Here and abstain.
And online, we have Brian Battaglia,
Here and yes.
Deb Levens.
Present and yes. Oh, no, abstain, sorry.
Okay, and Arthur Ruck.
I am here and yes on the minutes.
Thank you. Manchester. Oh, and Lynn Wiles joined us.
And I am here and yes.
Thanks, Lynn. Let's see. Manchester, we have Peter Capano
Here and yes.
and Ray Clement.
Here and yes.
And online, we have Dan O'Neill
Here and abstain.
and Marcus Ponce de Leon. Do we have Marcus still here? for his name. It looks like he may have left.
Sylvia.
Yes.
And I snuck in.
Oh, oh. And we
We'll
have,
trade one for the other.
we're trading with Don Waldron now.
And here, yes.
Traded down.
Oh, well, they're getting nasty in here. And New Boston, we have Mark Sunan.
Here, and yes.
In Wyndham, we have Peter Griffin
Here and yes.
and Ed Lapointe.
Here it is.
Online, we have John Hiltz.
Here and abstain.
Any community MPO folks that I missed? Seeing none, from, let's see, MTA, we have Mike Whitten.
Here, vote yes.
Thank you. And I didn't see anyone from DOT this go round. But we do have Tim White from DES. Hi, Tim, and we have Craig Tufts. Is Craig still here?
Yes, he is.
Is he? Okay. Oh, yeah.
I'm here, but I'm not my voting person. I'll
No,
abstain.
you're a non-voting. I'm just acknowledging that you're here.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. All right, take it away.
Okay, do we have any old business?
I hope not.
Okay. Last chance. First item under new business is the 10-year plan, and Nate Miller will be doing the presentation.
All right. We've got a series of updates on the 10-year plan to walk through over the next few minutes. So I will attempt to share my screen. Can everybody see this presentation online?
Yes.
All right. Excellent. So I will get started here without further ado. Again, as I mentioned, I'm going to walk through a series of updates about the 10-year plan update process that we are embarking on. So I think, as everybody knows, we work the 10-year plan under two state statutes, those being RSA 22899 and RSA 240. We work in our capacity as a regional planning commission and an MPO collaboratively with our colleagues at the other RPCs around the state, as well as New Hampshire DOT in the 10-year plan update process. The current 10-year plan is now the fiscal 23 to 32 10-year plan that was signed into law on July 22nd. You may remember we worked on that 2 years ago. So it takes its time to get through the process and through the hearings. And that is now in law. So now we are focused on the next 10-year plan update. And that will cover fiscal year 2025 to 2034. So hard to believe we're looking all the way out to 2034, but that's where we're at the moment. I show a version of this slide in every 10-year plan presentation, just because we talk about these different transportation plans and programs that we work on, and it's always good to remind everybody how things fit together. So on the left, we've got really three kind of core transportation plans that we work on in our office. The long range plan, which we call the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, that goes out 20 plus years. Our current Metropolitan Plan has a horizon year of 2045. So we're identifying long-term improvement needs in the region in that Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That becomes the source or the pipeline for projects to go into 10-year transportation improvement plan. The 10-year plan is a state requirement. It's not something, it's something specific that we do in New Hampshire, planning out to this 10-year horizon. Many other states don't have a 10-year plan. Federally, the only requirement is a long-range plan and a TIP. We have a 10-year plan in New Hampshire. And importantly, that is what the state considers to be a commitment to funding. So once something enters into the 10-year plan, that is a funding commitment that project will be brought to construction. And then lastly, we talk often about TIPs, TIP. The amendment to our TIP. TIP stands for Transportation Improvement Program. It is a federal requirement. Any project that has federal funds spent must be included in an adopted TIP. And in our case, the TIP is essentially the first 4 years of the 10-year plan. That's what that's what we base our tip off of. So just a sense of how these different plans and programs fit together. Now, you may remember 2 years ago, and 4 years ago, and 6 years ago, and 8 years ago, we had the same level of funding for the 10-year plan update process, and that was $50 million statewide for new projects to go into the 10-year plan. Our regional allocation for the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, based on our respective shares of population and federal aid eligible lane miles, translated to $8.5 million. So we 2 years ago and 4 years ago programmed $8.5 million worth of projects in the 10-year plan. Fortunately, because of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is also now referred to as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, you'll see both names for it. It refers to the same thing. I still call it the IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, substantially increased the formula funding that comes into New Hampshire and all of the other states for that matter for transportation purposes. So a little over a 20% increase in formula funding coming into the state. As a result, we have heard word, verbally at least, a commitment from New Hampshire DOT that we will see an increase in the statewide allocation that reflects that increase in formula funding coming into New Hampshire. So for this 10-year plan cycle, the statewide allocation is actually going to be about $60 million statewide for new projects to go into the plan. And our share of that, we anticipate to be about 10.56 million. So we'll have $2 million in additional funding to program new projects in this 10-year plan cycle. Now, some of that will be offset, obviously, by inflation increases that are happening. But in any case, it's good news for us and for our colleagues at the other RPCs. Just a reminder here, how do we evaluate 10-year plan projects? How do we prioritize those? We have a set of 15 criteria that we use to prioritize those projects. All of the regional planning commissions use the same set of 15 criteria. We just weight them differently based on the needs of our respective regions. So in our region, we will have a much higher weighting on congestion than our colleagues at North Country Council do, just because the unique needs of our region versus their region. I'm not going to go through this because you spent a substantial portion of the month of June's meeting going through and setting these criteria weightings. Suffice it to say, you did adopt updated criteria weightings in June for this 10-year plan cycle, and that's what we're going to ultimately be using to evaluate and prioritize projects. Again, in this 10-year plan cycle, as with the previous 2 10-year plan cycles, engineering review is required for all projects for scoping and cost estimating purposes that are put forward into the 10-year plan. We, every 2 years, release a request for qualifications, known as an RFQ for short, for engineering firms for this purpose. And we did that a few months ago, and we, through that process, have selected VHB to serve as our on-call engineer, and they will be doing scoping and cost estimating work for us. And in fact, I expect that this afternoon, our contract with VHB will be fully executed, and they'll be ready to get started on this work. So VHB has served as our previous on-call engineering firm and has done very good work in helping us scope and estimate the cost of these 10-year plan projects. And we look forward to working with them again in this cycle. A sense of the schedule for this 10-year plan update. We previously, back at the beginning of June, sent correspondence to all of the communities in the region, both in hard copy by regular mail as well as electronically, soliciting projects for this 10-year plan update. Communities had about 2 months to do that. Proposals were due back on July 29th. So two full meeting cycles for most communities, about 9 weeks or so to respond. I'll walk through in a few minutes some of the projects that we've received through that solicitation. We've already, as I mentioned in June, adopted the criteria weightings. We have been working with our TAC to appoint a project evaluation subcommittee to work with staff to develop an initial prioritization recommendation that will ultimately be presented to all of you. And just this morning met with VHB to begin crafting the task order for their assistance in scoping and cost estimating. That will continue through about mid-October or so. Our first kind of initial deadline is November 11th. That's when we are going to be sending our short list of candidate projects to New Hampshire DOT. And then ultimately, they will review those projects and in March, by March 31st of 2023, we will need to adopt and submit our final set of regional priorities for inclusion in the 10-year plan. So we're kind of just getting into that right now, the project evaluation and engineering review process. So much more to come in the coming months as we work towards that first deadline of November 11th to submit our short list of projects. What came in this cycle? I'll walk through some of the projects that we're going to be talking much more about in the coming months. I will do that in alphabetical order by the communities that submitted projects, and I'll start in the town of Bedford. Bedford submitted a safety improvement project from Wallace Road to the Bedford Town Line on Route 101, with a particular priority on the section between Wallace Road and Elk Drive. This is a continued implementation of a corridor study that I have a little screenshot of here on the left side that dates back to 2002. And that corridor study continues to be implemented. There was in 2002, this report that you see on the screen was done in Bedford. There was a corresponding report that also covered the towns of Amherst, Milford, and Wilton. Two projects have been implemented or are in the process of being implemented right now for the one in Amherst and one in Milford that are state-led projects. This would be,
Excuse me, but,
yes.
Where, you mean, say the Bedford town line, do you mean
The Bedford Amherst town line?
Amherst,
Yes. It is the Bedford town line. It's also the Amherst town line, yes. Yeah.
Not Manchester.
Correct. So we are going to, VHB will be helping to scope and do the cost estimate for this. There aren't, basically, the corridor study dating back to 2002 laid out some improvement concepts for this area. VHB is going to look at the 2002 study, determine which, if any of those improvement concepts still make sense under current conditions. And those improvements may include a two-way continuous left turn lane, center left turn lane, median improvements, specific intersection safety improvements, pedestrian crossing improvements, lighting, and left turn improvements. So we'll see what comes out of the scoping of that project, but this is continued implementation of that 2002 corridor study. Bedford's second priority, they submitted two projects in this for this 10-year plan cycle. The 101 project is their top priority. Their second priority is the construction of a multi-use path adjacent to Route 101 from Wallace Road to the Bedford Town Line, or the Amherst Town Line, however you'd like to refer to it. I can clarify this slide in the future, but yes, going to the Bedford Amherst Town Line. And we are focusing initially on having VHB scope and do cost estimates for the community's top priority projects. However, if depending on the resources available and how much it will cost us to scope the top priority projects, if resources are available, we will also have VHB scope the second priority project, which for Bedford is this project for a multi-use path on 101. In the town of Deerfield, you may remember this project. This was under consideration 2 years ago for our 10-year plan process. This is the conversion of Route 107, Candia Road and Church Street to a roundabout, a four-leg roundabout intersection. Deerfield has like us to continue considering this in this 10-year plan process. So we will assign this to VHB. VHB did some good work. This is actually a VHB concept sketch for the roundabout from 2 years ago. We will have VHB update their scoping memo and cost estimate for this project based on current conditions. So pretty straightforward. The town of Londonderry has 4 projects that are on our long range plan that they have would like to advance into the 10-year plan. The first is capacity improvements on Route 28 from Sims and Vista Ridge Drive to 128. The second is construction of phase 7 of the Londonderry Rail Trail, which is the final kind of section of the rail trail that's either not already constructed or not programmed to be constructed. And that would go to the Derry Town line. The third is increasing capacity of Route 102 from exit 4 to Route 128. And the fourth is construction of 4,300 feet of sidewalk along Pillsbury Road from Ash Street to Gilchrist Road. Given resource constraints, we are going to focus on the town of Londonderry's top 2 projects in this 10-year plan cycle. And starting with the top priority, the community's top priority, which is intersection capacity improvements on Route 28 from Sims and Vista Ridge Drive to 128. You may remember 2 years ago, we were able to refine the concept plan for the actual intersection of 28 and 128. That is fully funded in the 10-year plan. This project would be a capacity improvement on the corridor from that intersection to Sims and Vista Ridge Drive. So we will have VHB develop a scoping memo and cost estimate for that project. And again, for their second priority project, the phase 7 of the rail trail, if resources allow, we will assign that to VHB as well. But we want to make sure that the communities were able to scope and do cost estimates for at least every community's top priority project before moving on to the second priorities. In the city of Manchester, you may remember this from 2 years ago as well. This remains the city of Manchester's top priority for inclusion in the 10-year plan. It is exit 8 interchange improvements in the Wellington Road area. This would be adaptive signal control for the signalized intersections along this stretch at exit 8, as well as intersection capacity improvements and a bicycle lane. We had VHB develop a scoping memo and cost estimate. This is one of the concepts from that scoping memo. So this year, we will have them update the cost estimate for the project. And there have also been some developments that have occurred in the area that have made some incremental improvements to the intersections within this area. So we're going to have make sure that those are reflected in the scope for the project, and that the cost estimate reflects that a little bit of work has already been done in this area. The town of Windham has applied, sent in a project proposal for improvements to the Wyndham Greenway from Meeting House and Old Mill Road to the westerly right-of-way of Interstate 93. This is an east-west rail trail connection, essentially. It's an abandoned railroad right-of-way. It's not improved at this point. I think you could hike it if you wanted to, but it doesn't have an improved surface or drainage or any of those sorts of considerations yet. This would connect to on the other side of 93 to the Fremont branch of the Rockingham Rail Trail, which connects to a number of communities up to Fremont. So this would provide regional connectivity for the town of Windham from a bicycle and pedestrian perspective. So a little over 2 miles would be the improvement in total.
So Nate, just a little injected history. It was known as the Worcester Nashua Pullman Railroad when it was an active rail line. That was the extent of the rail service.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, as I mentioned, this would connect to the Fremont branch of the Rockingham Rail Trail, which provides connectivity to portions of Derry, Hampstead, Sandown, and Fremont. So kind of a regional connection there. We will assign this project to VHB for scoping and cost estimating. 2 communities raised safety concerns about intersections. They said we're not submitting a 10-year plan proposal, but we do have some concerns about these particular intersections. So our staff will be working with these two communities, Derry and Deerfield, to look at these intersections through the context of a road safety audit application that could potentially, if they qualify, open the door to highway safety improvement program funding for future improvements. So the town of Derry raised safety concerns about the intersection of Route 28 Lawrence Road and South Range Road. And the town of Deerfield raised intersection concerns, safety concerns about Route 43 and Route 107 intersection. So Carl Eppich in our office is going to be doing some homework with these communities about the crash history at these locations. And if they do qualify, we will pursue road safety audit application and potentially open the door for federal highway safety improvement program funding for those specific safety issues. So just as a recap, we will be assigning the following projects to VHB for scoping and cost estimating: the Route 101 Safety Improvement Project in Bedford, updating this previous scoping report for the 107 Candia Road Church Street roundabout in Deerfield, increasing the capacity of Route 28 from Sims and Vista Ridge Drive to 128 in Londonderry, updating the previous scoping report for the Exit 8 Wellington Road area in Manchester, and in Windham, improvements to the Windham Greenway from Meeting House and Old Mill Road to the westerly right-of-way of I-93. If resources allow, beyond scoping and cost estimating for those first 5 projects, we will also assign VHB to do scoping and cost estimating for the multi-use path in Bedford adjacent to Route 101, as well as phase 7 of the Londonderry Rail Trail. So we will be working with VHB over the coming days to scope that task order for this engineering work. And if it's possible for us, and if we have the resources available to scope all 7 projects, we will do that. But we certainly want to scope these 5 as a core starting point. Don.
Just for a frame of reference, can you give, I know it's project by project, but can you give an idea of like what would you be looking at for costs for VHB to scope out a project?
It really varies. Different projects have different level of complexity for scoping and cost estimating purposes. For us in this cycle, my sense is that it will be fairly straightforward for them to update Deerfield, fairly straightforward for them to update Manchester. I think the Windham project is also fairly straightforward as a rail trail improvement project. My sense is that the Bedford and Londonderry projects will require a little more bandwidth, and so the cost of scoping those projects is likely to be higher than scoping the other ones.
Well, like what is higher? I mean, just what range are we talking?
For context, we scoped projects. We scoped 5 projects 2 years ago, and overall it was about $48,000. And obviously, we expect prices have gone up a little bit due to inflation over the past 2 years. So we'll see. Our on-call engineering contract is with VHB is up to $90,000 over 2 years. But that also includes some transportation model assistance and other work that we need to have them do. So we wouldn't be spending that amount just on scoping and cost estimating for the 10-year plan in this cycle. So I think we're reasonably confident that we can do at least 5, and depending on the cost of those, potentially up to 7. So if we could do all 7, that would be really great, I think, and still have if we were able to do that and still have resources left over for future task orders for modeling. So,
are there additional questions for Nate within the room? Are there additional questions for those calling in? Nate, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Carl Eppich, and he'll be talking about coordinated public transit, human services, transportation plan.
Thanks, Peter. I'm actually going to let Adam drive. He's up on the screen with introducing this plan. He managed Carl Eppich on principal transportation. And at the end of this very brief,
You need to make it so Adam
can.
Oh, yeah. let me- At the end, I'll be just covering a sampling of some of the recommendations coming out of the plan. I click on them, right?
I can't share yet.
Oh, gotcha.
All right.
But now.
Yep. Thank you.
Adam's at the power. I'll present from back here when we get to it.
All right, can everybody see this? All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm Adam Hlasny. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner here at the Commission. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly today, along with Carl. This is the Region 8 Coordinating Council Coordinated Plan Update. So the coordinated plan, the full name of the plan is the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan. Rolls right off the tongue. So we call it the coordinated plan for short. This plan is a requirement for receiving Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 funds. And these funds are designed to improve mobility for seniors, individuals with disabilities, and other vulnerable populations in our region. So the plan, as is right in the name, it's about coordination. We assess the need for transportation services for our vulnerable populations, and we look to see how best to coordinate them and avoid duplication to make sure everyone's running the most efficient way possible. So today is just a quick overview, as I said, and next month at the September MPO meeting, we'll be seeking approval of the plan. In the meantime, the draft plan, which we have a version now, but we're working to incorporate some public comments. That will be placed on the SNHPC website in the next week or so, so everyone can check that out well in advance of the September meeting. So who's been involved in this plan update? The Region 8 Coordinating Council is the map you can see on your screen here. It's one of 8 regions in the state for coordinating transportation. It stretches from Ware and New Boston in the west over to Deerfield and then down to the Massachusetts border in the south. Region 8 used to be Greater Manchester, and it merged with Region 9, which was Greater Derry-Salem in the end of 2019. This group consists of transit providers, consumers, human service agencies, RPC staff from these 20 communities. It meets bi-monthly, and right now the main item is completing this plan. Carl and myself from SNHPC, as well as Scott Bogle from Rockingham Planning Commission, have done much of the work on the plan, but we have gotten considerable input from the RCC. So a few highlights here. The last time this plan was updated was 2016, and that may seem like it wasn't that long ago, but in the transportation world, a lot has happened since then. COVID being the obvious #1 thing that's affected ridership and ways to get around. Driver shortage in transit agencies has become nothing short of a crisis in New Hampshire as well as around the country. Mobility management, both at the statewide and regional levels, is something that's been kicking off over the last year or so. Our new regional mobility manager, Ben Herbert, just started a couple of weeks ago, so that's exciting to have him on board. And then another one is the MTA CART merger, which I believe is now almost 3 years ago, changed the way services were provided a little bit in the region. There are other items as well that aren't on here, like the IAJA and the increase in volunteer driver programs in the region and around the state. So a lot of the plan looks at updating data in our region, especially that of transit-dependent populations. The map to the left here that Zach in our office made shows the change in age 65 plus population in our region over the last decade. These populations increased in every single of the 20 communities, and it actually doubled in 4 of the communities in red here. We're also looking at populations of folks with disabilities and low income in an effort to figure out how they can best be served by transportation. Another element of the plan was a survey of 12 transportation providers. This was administered by Rockingham Planning Commission, and there were some interesting results, some that were expected, such as the downturn in ridership due to COVID, but also something that may not have been as expected, like the increase in volunteer driver program demand that ties in to COVID as well. You can see there are a lot more results that I won't go into now, but that you can see in the draft report. And then this is another element of the report. It's a little chart that details trip purpose across the top and strategies down the left. So across the top here, we have job access, pharmacy, medical trips, both chronic and out of region, grocery trips, errands, social, and after school. And then down the left, there are the various, I won't read all of them, but various strategies to address these trip types. To take as an example, the third one down here, develop volunteer-based demand response service. Many of you have probably seen these charts, but the red means it's not a great fit. So for job access, you're probably not going to have a volunteer driver bring you to your job every day. But if it's a pharmacy trip or a medical trip, either in or out of the region, that volunteer driver program might be the perfect fit for you. And then the yellow, groceries and errands, it might work, but maybe not the best option. So this is a chart that we worked on to kind of see at a glance the different types of transportation that might work in the region. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Carl for some of the plan findings and recommendations.
As we can see up on the, well, I'll wait till it unmutes us.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Now that we're unmuted. So ultimately the plan, part of the purpose is to create recommendations from the findings and from the survey work. And currently we have 16 recommendations. A lot of these recommendations are carried over in some form from the previous two plans, because again, it was region 8 and 9. But many of them are newly constructed, and they generally fall into these 5 categories. The biggest one, and perhaps the most important one, that's like an umbrella over the entire recommendation suite, is this concept of a mobility manager, mobility management. And there's 2 recommendations. One is simply to establish and support a region 8 mobility manager, which can really, head up the implementation of the rest of the plan and do the coordinated community transportation throughout the region. Adam, I don't know if you want to just switch over to the plan. It's going to be tough to read no matter what, which is kind of why we're doing it in this format, but you'll be able to see each of them in the written print. I encourage everyone to take a look at the actual draft of the plan. The second one related to mobility managers is to maintain and encourage regional collaboration of the transportation providers themselves. It's I can't remember exactly how long it is, but it's a pretty lengthy overall document.
Sorry about that. Let me, I think this is the wrong chapter. Hold on a second.
Okay, well, I'll just continue on and you'll bring it up. The next one is, you guys may have heard a bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion. To develop a DEI policy, including overall goals, objectives, and desired outcomes framework and implementation timeline aligned with our federal guidance. Another part of DEI is to simply develop a multifaceted strategy to incorporate DEI strategies and measures into the operational culture of each of the region's transit operators. The next 2 have to deal with primarily with seniors, ensure transportation services for the daily needs of seniors and those with disabilities to provide mobility to medical, social, and other health and activity destinations. And that was in the matrices that Adam showed just before, we touched on those types of trips. Another one in this area is simply to collaborate. We're doing a little bit more with partnerships, collaborate with community, recreation, and senior centers to develop and provide mobility offerings for the populations they serve. The next 2 are also related to outreach and working with public-private develop and refine sustained outreach strategies across media channels, whether or not they're, hard media, traditional media, or social media, to provide awareness of the regional transportation options, where the buses are, where the shuttles are, demand response, volunteer, et cetera. Number 8, develop public-private community transportation options, again, such as volunteer driver programs, and to replace the taxi voucher programs for travel during weekends and evenings. Jump down to number 10. This is where we get into a little bit more of the relationships with employers. Assess transportation and commuting labor supply needs by employers, where there's a concentration of workers, and explore potential services to expand employment access. Let's see. Another couple examples, a bunch of them are around actual services. Number 11, establish fixed route transit service or additional route deviation shuttle services in the region. And jump down to 14. The bunch of these 12 and 13 deal with funding. Funding is always a key piece of this, but some of them are a little bit more strategic. Utilize and develop efficiencies in demand responsive and other community transportation services provided on call. And this one specifically talks about tasking with the mobility manager. And 15, continue to participate in groups that further statewide transit coordination and advocacy to implement the goals and objectives of the RCC's statewide blueprint for transit. It's an ongoing mother document for the entire state, and for us to pick up and be responsive to that statewide document within the region. And the last two, 16 and 17, have to deal again with funding, but working locally. Number 16, work with municipalities to maintain and enhance local funding for community transportation. And 17, very broadly, to advocate to expand dedicated state transit funding, which is an ongoing and never-ending challenge for transit providers in New Hampshire. And that's really an overview, and I think we're at the point where if you had any questions, we may have some time, Sylvia.
Questions for Adam or Carl in-house? Questions for Adam or Carl, those people calling in? Wow, everyone, yes.
Mr. Chairman, Dan O'Neill. See if I can get my screen up here. I think it was during Adam's portion. You talked about, I think it was when you were talking about the volunteer drivers, and it triggered something about getting people to jobs. And I don't want to quote you, but you mentioned it, and I know there are people, for instance, not a surprise, we're dealing with homeless, every community is, but Manchester especially. But one of the things, and a great success story, 2 people that were homeless in Manchester wanted to live in Concord. There was a just local issue to help find them a place in Concord, but then they were willing to work. Home Depot has offered to put people to work after drug screening, and Home Depot actually sent people to pick them up. This story goes back a few years, but pick them up and take them home every day. So as much as the Manchester Transit Authority is great, it doesn't always get people where they need to at the times for jobs. And I don't know if either one of you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Dan, thank you. Number 10, we do, it's not that specific, but this is still a period where we can make adjustments to some of the recommendations. We do talk about working with local employers, especially larger ones, or in areas where there's a concentration of workers. This is in recommendation 10, and it makes mention here about a project that was piloted in the mill yard. But the idea is simply to work with larger employers and perhaps the transit providers or other services, maybe directly, like in the example you gave with a Home Depot or someone like that, to explore potential services. And again, these would be unique and innovative. It's great to know about that example, because we can use it potentially to share with other employers. So I'll probably reach out to you to pick your brain a little bit more about that, and maybe
if I recall, it was Home Depot on both South Willow and Manchester, and the one in Hooksett, and the one that worked that I recall in this situation was the one in Hooksett. it was something that was part of making a difference in a couple people's lives. And,
Yeah, and
no longer homeless, but transportation was a key part of it. And I know Mike, getting Mike Whitten involved in these discussions is important as well, but it wasn't as simple as getting somebody from downtown Manchester out to a place. These people wanted to live in Concord. It's where they were from, and getting them to a Manchester employer. So I just throw that out. It kind of triggered when one of you was talking about it.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great example.
We have a question in-house here.
Yeah, almost kind of goes along with that, but has there been any exploration of bringing like Concord Coach / Boston Express Intercity into this network where if you can get someone to exit 5 North Londonderry, they can take Boston Express to Salem if they have a job at Hlasny Village or something like that. But bringing that another network that has intercity. New Hampshire
It's, along these lines, Don, it is, I'm not know about specific with, was it Concord Coach?
It's Concord Coach runs it, Boston Express under funding by the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah, and I might lean on Mike a little bit here. I know that they run they have been running, I think with MTA between Concord and Salem, or Mike, am I on the mark here? Not specifically for job access, though, I don't believe.
Yeah, so MTA currently today runs intercity service between Manchester and Nashua and Manchester and Concord. That service is about to get some significant improvements. We're accepting 3 MCI commuter coach buses from MVRTA that'll be on those routes this fall, and that will cause a schedule realignment so that you'll be able to travel from Concord all the way through to Nashua and vice versa, both directions. And we're going to be incorporating the airport into that. And then we have a plan for next summer to launch a 3rd express line that will meet the statewide needs assessment. Number 1 priority, connecting Salem, Londonderry, and Manchester with service. So you'll be able to get anywhere within that triangle.
And Mike, is that in partnership with a transit provider, other transportation provider, or is that those are with MTA vehicles?
All MTA.
Any additional questions in-house? Any additional questions from those calling in? Great, thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, is there other business?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Tim White, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services.
Yes, Tim, go ahead.
Last month at your MPO meeting, our grants coordinator, Ricky DeCillo, he did a presentation on the state clean diesel program funding opportunity. Ricky asked me to remind everyone that opportunity is still open. The proposals are due September 9th, and there's also the possibility of subsequent funding rounds if funding remains after the first round. So if you have any questions, if you think you have a viable project or you're just looking for information on the program, you can go to the DES website or contact Ricky or myself. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, any other questions or comments? Any? Nope. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
No.
We took it off the agenda because
We thought we would be right up against 1 o'clock.
We can sit here and sing for 10 minutes that we have left. I enjoy it.
Peter's going to lead us in it.
I don't think so. It'll drive people out so quickly. Any other business? No, okay, the motion to adjourn is a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you all so much.
Population will be on next month.
Good.